You wake up gasping for air. Your chest is tight. Your hands are shaking. It's the same nightmare again. The same crushing weight. The same drowning feeling. You stumble to the mirror. The reflection stares back at you. Same eyes, same face. But something deeper has shifted. Something inside you is broken, and you can't even explain why. Things that happened to you changed you forever, day by day, feeling worse, overwhelmed, and lost. Those are a few symptoms that trauma can bring into your life. Trauma is not laziness or an excuse to do nothing. It's very intrusive, and it goes way deeper than you ever imagined. Trauma is not just an event, it is a profound response that completely transforms the way you see the world. According to Bessel van der Kolk, one of the world's leading experts on trauma, the definition goes far beyond what we normally think. Trauma is something that happens to you and leaves you so disturbed that it literally overwhelms your ability to cope. In the 90s, we were so ignorant and closed-minded to it. It wasn't taken seriously at all, so it was really hard to understand the human mind. Bessel van der Kolk talks about an experience that he had with soldiers that went to the Vietnam War. He met those veterans in 1978, 6 years after the war ended, and what he heard shocked his core. After all of this time, those soldiers still kept referring back to their dead comrades. Their hearts seemed to be with the people who were no longer around. It was like their minds only valued the past over and over again. So they found it very hard to love their wives, kids, or just be present in the moment they were in. It was a deep hole in their lives that they couldn't get out of. And an even stranger thing was how this was not a linear thing. They were very passive most of the time, but if someone said something that bothers them, they could become very angry very quickly. It was like a light switch. Something seemed to have happened to them that made it very hard to modulate their responses to their environment. But the big question that arrives with that was, what is the difference that those guys experience from other people in psychiatry? And that was discovered when van der Kolk read a book from a man who worked with soldiers in World War I. Abram Gardiner wrote a book in 1941, explaining what those soldiers had suffered. He wrote, "These guys suffer from a physioneurosis. Their bodies continue to re-experience that very terrible, frightening situation, and that event keeps coming back in terms of images, behaviors, and physical sensations. So that became the core of our definition of post-traumatic stress disorder, known as PTSD. After that, Bessel van der Kolk and his team wrote that those soldiers have been exposed to an extraordinary event outside of normal human experience. But unfortunately, that was a mistake, because it turned out that this is not an unusual experience at all. You see, trauma is subjective and can happen in multiple ways. What can be traumatic for one maybe is not for the other one. It can depend on personalities and mostly prior experiences. One of those was the story that I just told, but they are way more common than we imagine in our daily lives. Trauma doesn't need to be a war, a car accident, and a house on fire. It can be something like a fight, humiliation, and bullying. It's not surprising that many emotional wounds begin when people are very young. Children are especially open to being deeply hurt inside because they are born without a strong understanding of themselves or the world around them. They depend a lot on their parents or caregivers. Sometimes a child might be hurt emotionally by something a parent goes through. For example, a parent might feel very sad or empty after having a baby, and even though it's not their fault, the baby might feel scared or alone because of it. In other cases, a child might witness a parent shouting loudly or being physically rough, which can leave lasting fear or sadness. But not all emotional pain in children comes from big or dramatic events. In fact, the kind that happens most often is something that may not seem serious at first. It's called neglect. This means that during the most important early years of life, especially from birth to about 5 years old, a child may not get the gentle care they need. If a child isn't often held, comforted, or spoken to with kindness and warmth, it can make them feel unwanted or invisible. This kind of emotional hurt can happen without anyone meaning to cause harm. But when a baby or young child doesn't feel deeply loved, safe, or seen, it can leave a quiet kind of sadness that stays for a long time. That's why it's so important for grown-ups to understand how powerful their love, attention, and care are in helping children grow up feeling safe, and whole. Now that we understand the core concepts, the real question is, how does trauma actually work? Is something that we relive every single moment? Is something that is only in our mind? Or is something that triggers it? The problem with trauma is that it starts off with something that happens to us, but that's not where it stops, because it changes your brain. The development of trauma is when trauma meets attachment. When you experience an emotionally traumatic event, the way you remember that event is very different from how you remember a non-traumatic event. Why? Because trauma memories are stored in different parts of the brain than non-traumatic memories. The biological explanation can be a bit complicated if detailed, but let's simplify it to understand better. Traumatic memories are stored in the right, back part of your brain, which produces non-verbal memories, such as how things looked, sounded, and smelled. Non-traumatic memories, on the other hand, are stored in the left, front part of your brain, which is more associated with language and the ability to produce narrative accounts. This difference in the way the brain encodes these memories explains why traumatic memories are so vivid and haunting. When something traumatic happens, it can enter your body through what you hear, see, or feel. Something becomes traumatic when it feels like there's no way to stop what's happening. Your body, without you even thinking about it, goes into a strong reaction. It might prepare you to fight, to run away, or to completely shut down. The tricky part about trauma is that even after the scary moment has passed, your body and mind may still act like you're in trouble. So these memories feel as though they're happening in real time. It could have been 10 years ago, but it still feels like it's happening over and over again for the first time. Even little things, like someone being rude or something not going your way, can feel much bigger than they really are. You might find yourself getting very angry when someone bumps into you at the store. You might shout at other cars while driving. You might even feel upset or impatient with your family more easily than you'd like. What's important to know is that most people don't always realize where these big feelings are coming from. They may not know that their strong reactions today are actually connected to something hard or scary that happened before. The event itself might be over, but your body and brain can still remember how it felt, and they might still act like you're in danger, even when you're not. This is also why traumatic events are hard to talk about. Since they keep in a non-verbal part of the brain, the people who become traumatized have a hard time to describe what really happened, how it happened, and the sequence that happened. But their sensorial feelings are very sharp. So if it was a house fire that caused this traumatic event, they can feel the heat in their faces. If it was a car crash, they can hear the sound of the collision. That experience travels deep into your brain, to a part that works very quickly to answer an important question: am I safe or am I in danger? This happens because the brain becomes hyper-alert. How often do you feel tense or jumpy without even knowing why? This heightened state of alertness is why trauma survivors often feel anxious or on edge, even when there's no immediate danger. Your mind remains in a constant state of vigilance, scanning for potential threats, and making it hard to relax or feel safe. So the big problem is, how can we make someone feel safe in a body that is in constant fight or flight mode? Is there medicine? How is it done? Well, the biggest misconception that we have right now is the way a lot of psychiatrists deal with it. Bessel van der Kolk expresses this vividly, and it's not good. The mainstream system of psychiatry psychology says, there is something wrong with you and I need to fix you. But trauma isn't a malfunction, it's an adaptation. It's the mind and body reshaping themselves to survive overwhelming experiences. When trauma survivors seek help, many encounter a system focused mainly on managing symptoms, usually through medication or cognitive behavioral strategies. Antidepressants like Prozac or Zoloft are often prescribed for PTSD, and while medications can offer some relief, they rarely reach the core of what trauma really is. The real wound is not chemical, it's relational, emotional, and deeply embodied. Healing requires more than numbing pain. It demands restoring safety, connection, and meaning. Without understanding this, modern psychiatry unintentionally risks leaving people feeling even more broken, trying to fix something that was never truly understood in the first place. That's extremely difficult because people are filled with shame. They're condemned for being unable to just get better, even though they're actively following their prescribed treatments. A key issue here is that doctors rarely attempt to address the deep underlying wounds caused by trauma. Instead, they default to masking symptoms with medications. But why does this happen? Doctors today spend so little time with patients that they can't truly grasp how trauma affects every part of someone's life: relationships, identity, sense of safety, and even their connection with their own bodies. Without genuinely understanding their patient's personal story, there's no way to effectively treat the root of their pain. This superficial approach leads patients to perceive their doctors as detached and uninterested, focused solely on managing symptoms through medication rather than guiding them through meaningful healing processes. As Bessel van der Kolk points out, this creates a harmful cycle. Medications may temporarily ease the pain, but they don't help patients create lasting change in their lives, nor do they help overcome the trauma itself. Consequently, people develop a tolerance, requiring higher and higher doses, sometimes even additional medications, yet the initial trauma remains unresolved, continuously resurfacing beneath the surface. Tragically, patients internalize the message that their trauma is incurable, believing there's no genuine path to recovery. They're left feeling helpless, disconnected, and stuck. But if medications alone aren't the answer, what is? How can we truly heal after trauma and reclaim our sense of self? This is precisely where the concept of neuroplasticity offers genuine hope. Neuroplasticity means that the brain can grow and build new pathways. This ability to change can work in two directions. Bad experiences, like trauma, can create unhelpful patterns in the brain and even make some parts of the brain smaller. But the good news is that there are different ways to help the brain heal. With the right care and support, the brain can form better, healthier connections that help a person feel safe and strong again. There are basically two pathways to deal with trauma. The first one is to try to prevent it. One of the most important things that can help stop a bad experience from turning into deep hurt is having someone kind and caring with you when it happens. For example, if you're a child and a dog bites you, it can feel really scary and painful. But if your parent or caregiver comes right away, holds you close, and says something like, "Oh no, I can see you're really hurt. I'm here to take care of you," then the bite doesn't leave such a heavy mark inside you. That's because even though the bite was painful, you still felt safe. You knew someone loved you and was there to protect you. That feeling of being safe and loved makes a big difference and helps you heal more easily. The second one is when the person is already traumatized for a while. And in this way, there's a few ways to deal with it. One of the methods that is very clear is being in relationships where people can hear you, where you can talk about how badly you feel, where you can talk about your guilt, and where you can start opening up about where these feelings come from, how old these feelings are, and how you develop them in response to particular things that happened to you. That was actually quite helpful, because you need to really develop a deep sense of, this is what happened to me, this is what I'm dealing with, and I need to take care of the wounds that I'm carrying inside of myself. This issue of self-compassion and really knowing that your reactions are understandable and rooted in you getting stuck in the past is a terribly important part of beginning to recover from trauma. Another way people can start healing is through something called eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, or EMDR. It works like this. While you remember a painful memory, you move your eyes back and forth, following a guide. This simple movement helps both sides of your brain talk to each other. Little by little, the memory that once felt so heavy and scary starts to lose its power. You still remember what happened, but it doesn't overwhelm you the same way anymore. Instead, your brain can store the memory safely, without it taking over your feelings. Another way that can really help is something called trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy, or trauma-focused CBT. In this kind of therapy, you learn to notice the thoughts and actions that grew out of the hurt you went through and gently start to change them. It also often includes something called exposure therapy. That's where, little by little, you safely face the memories or places that once made you feel scared. And as you do it, slowly and carefully, the fear starts to shrink. What once felt overwhelming becomes something you can handle. There are also therapies that focus on the body, called somatic therapies. These therapies understand that trauma doesn't just live in your mind. It can get stuck in your body too. deep in your nervous system. Two examples are somatic experiencing and sensorimotor psychotherapy. They help you slow down, notice the feelings inside your body, and gently release the tension that's been trapped there. As the tension lets go, your body starts to feel calmer. And with that, you begin to feel more peaceful inside too. Bessel van der Kolk says that this is where you can stop feeling the guilt that you might have felt at that time. It helps you become more self-loving and starts to understand yourself better and better after this change. So my question to you is, how are you feeling right now? If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe for more videos of psychology, psychoanalysis, and philosophy.